The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of cosmic energy. But what happens when a mind from beyond the stars arrives, a mind that has spent a lifetime proving that gods can bleed, that power without intelligence is nothing, and that humanity's greatest weapon has always been its intellect? In a galaxy where mystical warriors command respect through invisible powers, one man would prove that the most dangerous force in the universe isn't channeled through meditation and ancient traditions. It's calculated in laboratories and boardrooms. Lex Luthor's eyes snapped open to crimson emergency lighting and the acrid smell of burning circuitry. The experimental FTL chamber aboard his private research station had been pristine 30 seconds ago. Now it looked like the inside of a crushed soda can. Alarms screamed in languages his neural implants couldn't translate, which should have been impossible. LexCorp's linguistic databases contained every Earth language, dead or living. He cataloged his physical state with practiced efficiency: cracked ribs, possible concussion, lacerations across his left arm. Nothing immediately fatal. The transparent aluminum viewport revealed something that made his considerable intellect pause. Space looked wrong. The constellations were completely unfamiliar. Not displaced, utterly alien. No Orion's belt. No North Star. No reference points from Earth's sky whatsoever. Fascinating, Luthor murmured, his analytical mind already working through the implications. The FTL drive hadn't just malfunctioned. It had torn through something fundamental. Dimensional barriers. Parallel universe. The readings on the surviving monitors showed energy signatures that defied every physical law he knew, yet somehow maintained internal consistency. The research station shuddered violently. Through the viewport, he watched debris from his vessel scatter across the upper atmosphere of a massive city-planet below. Towers stretched into the stratosphere like metallic mountains. Aerial traffic moved in organized lanes thousands of levels deep. The scale was staggering, far beyond anything Earth had achieved. His emergency beacon activated automatically, broadcasting on multiple frequencies. Within 90 seconds, 3 wedge-shaped craft approached with smooth precision. Not terrestrial design. Not even close. The craft's energy signatures registered on his instruments as completely foreign technology, yet undeniably functional. One of them caught his tumbling research station in a glowing tractor beam, another technology Earth was decades from perfecting. Luthor's mind raced through scenarios. First contact protocols wouldn't apply here. He wasn't representing Earth, he was representing himself, stranded in what appeared to be an entirely different universe with technology he couldn't immediately replicate. A lesser man might panic. Luthor felt the familiar thrill of a new challenge. The craft towed his damaged station toward a landing platform on one of the upper towers. Through the viewport, he observed humanoid figures in armor approaching with weapons drawn. Not human, multiple species. One appeared reptilian, another had blue skin, a third possessed tentacles where a human would have facial features. Convergent evolution across species? Or evidence of ancient genetic engineering? When the airlock opened and the soldiers entered, Luthor raised his hands in what he hoped was a universal gesture of non-aggression. Their weapons, elegant cylinders with glowing chambers, tracked his movements with professional precision. "I am Lex Luthor," he said clearly, knowing they likely couldn't understand him yet. "I come in peace, though not by choice. I require medical attention and information about where, and when, I am." The lead soldier, a human woman with commander's insignia, spoke into a wrist-mounted device. A holographic image flickered to life, and suddenly her words resolved into comprehensible English through some kind of real-time translation technology. "More evidence of advanced civilization. You are on Coruscant, capital of the Galactic Republic," the commander said, her tone professional but wary. "Your vessel appeared without hyperspace signatures and nearly collided with a Senate transport. You're under temporary detention until we determine if you're a separatist agent or simply the worst pilot in the galaxy." Galactic Republic. Separatists. Hyperspace. The terms meant nothing to him yet, but Luthor filed them away with perfect recall. He'd built LexCorp from nothing into Earth's most powerful megacorporation. He'd manipulated the Justice League, the United States government, and Superman himself. Whatever this galaxy's power structures, he would learn them, exploit them, and ultimately reshape them. I assure you, Commander, I'm neither, Luthor replied smoothly, lowering his hands as medics approached with scanners. I'm an industrialist and scientist who has just had a very unexpected commute. I'm prepared to offer technological consultation in exchange for information and resources to repair my vessel. The commander's expression shifted slightly, interest replacing suspicion. Technology. The Republic Science Council will want to speak with you. As will the Jedi Council. Jedi? Luthor asked, noting how her tone carried both respect and something else. Deference? Fear? Peacekeepers of the Republic. Wielders of the Force. The commander gestured to one of her soldiers, a younger man whose hand rested on his belt near an unusual cylindrical weapon. They'll sense if you're lying. Lie detection through mystical means. Luthor's expression remained neutral, but internally he catalogued this as a critical threat. In every universe, it seemed, there were beings who claimed power beyond normal human achievement. On Earth, he'd spent decades developing contingencies against Superman, Wonder Woman, and every other metahuman who thought their powers made them superior to ordinary humanity. Here, in this galaxy, he would do the same. As the medics escorted him from his damaged research station, Luthor caught sight of the Coruscant skyline through the platform's edge. Thousands of ships moved through the air lanes. Massive buildings stretched beyond the horizon in every direction. And somewhere in this city-planet's depths, there were resources, technology, and knowledge waiting to be acquired. Lex Luthor had arrived in a galaxy at war, ruled by mystical warriors and governed by a republic that seemed straining under its own weight. He'd seen this pattern before, corrupt systems waiting for someone brilliant enough to either save them or replace them entirely. The question wasn't whether he would survive here. It was how quickly he could thrive. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. The Republic Science Council's interrogation chamber was impressive by any standard. Holographic displays floated in mid-air, data streaming faster than most organic minds could process. But Lex Luthor had never possessed a most organic mind. His eyes tracked the information flows, his eidetic memory cataloging everything. Star charts. Trade routes. Something called hyperspace lanes. A galaxy of thousands of inhabited systems, all connected by faster-than-light travel that Earth wouldn't achieve for centuries. And everywhere, references to the Force. Your vessel's technology is unlike anything in our databases, said Chief Scientist Boltrund, a Gran with 3 eye stalks studying multiple data screens simultaneously. The power source alone defies conventional physics. No hypermatter reactor, no ion drive, yet it generated enough energy to tear through real space from wherever you originated. Luthor sat relaxed in the chair designed for humanoids, his cracked ribs bound by their surprisingly advanced medical technology. They'd offered him back to treatment, some kind of regenerative substance that accelerated healing beyond anything on Earth. He'd accepted, naturally, while his mind dissected every component of the medical scanner that had examined him. I'm from a planet called Earth, Luthor explained, his tone measured and cooperative. We're in the early stages of space exploration by your standards. The FTL drive was experimental, clearly more experimental than I anticipated. I appear to have crossed not just space, but dimensional boundaries. The scientists exchanged glances. One of them, a Duros with smooth blue skin, leaned forward. Dimensional travel is theoretically possible according to some interpretations of hyperspace mechanics, but the energy requirements would be astronomical. And you claim to have done this accidentally? I claim to have survived doing it accidentally, Luthor corrected. There's a significant difference. My vessel's core is a miniaturized fusion reactor enhanced with exotic matter manipulation, what we call zero-point energy. When combined with a prototype warp field generator, the result was supposed to achieve 0.3 light speed. Instead, it appears to have punched through the fabric of spacetime itself. He watched their reactions carefully. Confusion mixed with fascination. These were brilliant minds, clearly, but they thought within the parameters of their galaxy's technology. They had faster-than-light travel, yet seemed to take it for granted rather than understanding its deeper implications. They had artificial intelligence that could translate languages instantly, yet appeared to rely heavily on organic labor. And most tellingly, they possessed technology that could scan his body down to the cellular level, yet deferred to mystical force wielders for truth verification. A galaxy of contradictions. A galaxy ripe for exploitation. The Jedi Council has requested an audience, Trun said carefully. They wish to assess your intentions. I've been hearing that term repeatedly, Luthor said. Jedi. Peacekeepers who wield the Force. I confess I'm unfamiliar with the concept. Where I come from, peacekeeping is handled by governments and legal systems, not mystical orders. The room grew noticeably quieter. The Duros scientist's expression shifted to something between pity and concern. You don't know about the Force. You can't sense it at all. I sense gravity, electromagnetic radiation, and quantum fluctuations, Luthor replied dryly. If your force is something beyond measurable physical phenomena, then no, I cannot sense it. Trun's eye stalks rotated independently, a gesture Luthor interpreted as surprise. The Force is the energy field created by all living things. It surrounds us, penetrates us, binds the galaxy together. Some beings are sensitive to it, can manipulate it. The Jedi are the most disciplined practitioners, they maintain peace and justice throughout the Republic. Luthor's expression remained neutral, but internally his mind crystallized around a singular conclusion: this galaxy had superpowered beings who claimed to maintain justice through abilities normal citizens couldn't possess or even perceive. They were venerated. Trusted with governmental authority. Given power over those without their gifts. He'd spent 30 years on Earth fighting exactly this paradigm. Fascinating, Luthor said, his tone perfectly calibrated to suggest academic interest rather than the cold fury building in his chest. And these Jedi, they're born with this ability? Or can anyone learn it? Both and neither, the Duros explained. Force sensitivity is tied to microscopic organisms in living cells called midi-chlorians. Higher concentrations allow for greater force potential. The Jedi identify force-sensitive children and train them from infancy. Children. They took children and trained them into weapons, convinced them they were special, superior to the masses who lacked their genetic lottery winnings. Luthor had watched Superman do the same thing, use his Kryptonian heritage to position himself as Earth's guardian, as if humanity needed an alien god to solve its problems. I see, Luthor said simply. And the separatists you mentioned earlier? They oppose the Jedi. Trun's expression darkened. The Separatist Alliance opposes the Republic itself. Thousands of systems have seceded, claiming the Senate is corrupt and ineffective. They've built a droid army and sparked a war that's torn the galaxy apart. The Jedi serve as generals, but even they're stretched thin across countless battlefronts. A civil war. Corporate interests funding a droid army against a republic defended by mystical warriors. Luthor recognized the pattern immediately, the same kind of conflict he'd orchestrated dozens of times on Earth. Create crisis, offer solution, profit from chaos while positioning yourself as indispensable. Someone in this galaxy was playing the same game. And whoever they were doing it on a scale that made Luthor's Earth machinations look provincial. I'd like to meet these Jedi, Luthor said, standing smoothly despite his healing injuries. If I'm to operate in this galaxy, I should understand all its major institutions. And I have resources to offer. My research station may be damaged, but the technology aboard it represents knowledge your Republic might find useful. I'm a businessman, scientists. I deal in mutually beneficial arrangements. Trund considered this, his three eyes focusing on different aspects of Luthor's expression, searching for deception, perhaps. The Jedi will see you, but understand, they can sense intentions through the Force. Deception is difficult in their presence. Luthor smiled, the expression warm and genuine, looking through decades of practice. Then they'll sense that I'm genuinely interested in survival, prosperity, and understanding this remarkable galaxy I've found myself in. I've built my life on transparency and cooperation. The lies came as naturally as breathing. But they weren't technically lies, he was interested in survival and prosperity. He simply had different definitions of those terms than the scientists assumed. As guards escorted him from the Science Council chambers toward the Jedi Temple, Luthor gazed out at Coruscant's endless cityscape. Somewhere in this galaxy, power was consolidating. Someone was manipulating a war for their own ends. The Republic was failing, the Separatists were rising, and mystical warriors were too busy playing soldier to see the larger game. Lex Luthor had spent his life proving that intellect trumped power, that planning defeated strength, that a human being with sufficient brilliance could bring gods to their knees. This galaxy was about to learn the same lesson. The Jedi Temple rose from Coruscant's surface like a monument to ancient arrogance, 5 towers reaching toward the sky, each one a proclamation that Force users stood above the mundane concerns of ordinary citizens. Luthor's escort speeder approached the main entrance, and he noted the architecture with clinical interest. Elegant, yes. Imposing, certainly. But also isolated. The temple stood apart from the Senate district, apart from the commercial zones, apart from the lives of trillions who called this planet home. Superman's Fortress of Solitude had the same problem, beautiful, powerful, and completely disconnected from humanity. The temple guards at the entrance wore masks and carried double-bladed lightsabers, those curious plasma weapons he'd observed on multiple Republic security forces. Their stances radiated trained lethality, but they stepped aside without challenge as Luthor's Republic escort presented credentials. Inside, the temple's halls were quiet, almost serene, filled with robed figures moving with practiced grace. Younglings, children no older than 5 or 6, practiced forms with training sabers in a courtyard visible through massive windows. Taken from their families, Luthor reminded himself. Indoctrinated from infancy to believe their power made them the galaxy's rightful guardians. The council chamber is this way, his escort said quietly, a young Republic officer who'd maintained nervous silence during the entire journey. Please remember, the Jedi Masters are not to be trifled with. They've served the Republic for thousands of years. I have nothing but respect for tradition, Luthor replied smoothly. Particularly traditions that have endured so long. Though I confess curiosity about how the Republic functioned before the Jedi became so integral to its governance. The officer didn't answer, which was answer enough. The council chamber occupied one of the temple's highest towers, a circular room with seats arranged in a ring. 12 Jedi Masters sat in positions of judgment, various species, various ages, all radiating the same quiet authority that came from unquestioned power. Luthor recognized the tactical disadvantage immediately. They literally surrounded him, forcing him to turn his back on some of them regardless of where he stood. A power play. Subtle, but effective. Lex Luthor, said a small green being with ancient eyes and pointed ears, seated in one of the most prominent positions. From beyond this galaxy, you claim to come. Unusual, this is. Troubling, perhaps. Luthor inclined his head respectfully, his body language open and non-threatening. Master Yoda, I presume. The Republic Science Council speaks highly of your wisdom. I apologize for the dramatic nature of my arrival. It certainly wasn't planned. The Force brought you here for a purpose, said a dark-skinned human with a measured, thoughtful voice. Everything happens for a reason, though the reason may not be immediately clear. I am Mace Windu, senior member of this council. Luthor felt the weight of their attention like physical pressure, 12 minds focused entirely on him, searching for something his instruments couldn't measure. The Force, presumably. They were trying to read his intentions, sense his truthfulness, peer into his mind with their mystical abilities. He thought of Superman using X-ray vision to invade privacy, of Martian Manhunter reading thoughts without permission. Same violation, different methodology. I don't mean to be presumptuous, Luthor said carefully, but I sense you're attempting to evaluate me through the Force. I should inform you, where I come from, I've been extensively tested for various forms of psychic or supernatural sensitivity. I appear to be what my people would call baseline human. No special abilities. Just intelligence and determination. No midi-chlorians detected in your blood work, confirmed a Syrian Jedi with an elongated skull, Kiadi Mundi, according to the briefing materials Luthor had speed read. You are entirely Force null. In a galaxy of trillions, such beings are common, yet, unusual to encounter one with your apparent technological sophistication. On my world, we have beings with extraordinary powers, Luthor explained, his tone conversational. Genetic mutations, alien origins, mystical sources. But the vast majority of humanity possesses none of these gifts. We've learned to compensate through technology, science, and ingenuity. It's made us resilient. Yet it has also brought you here, Yoda observed, his ears twitching slightly. Accidentally, you say. Careless with powerful forces, perhaps. Dangerous, this experimentation can be. Luthor allowed himself a small, self-deprecating smile. A fair criticism, Master Yoda. Though I'd note that every major technological advancement involves risk. Someone had to be the first to harness fire, to sail beyond sight of land, to split the atom. Progress requires those willing to venture into the unknown. And profit from it? Mace Windu's voice carried an edge. The Science Council reports you've already begun negotiating terms for sharing your technology. You've been in this galaxy less than 6 hours. I'm a businessman, Master Windu, Luthor replied without hesitation. My research station is damaged. I have no resources in this galaxy, no currency, no support network. Offering my expertise in exchange for repairs and accommodations seems reasonable. Unless the Jedi Order provides free lodging to dimensional travelers. A few council members shifted slightly. Was that amusement? Irritation? Their faces remained largely impassive, but Luthor had spent decades reading micro-expressions in boardroom negotiations. The Republic faces a grave crisis, said a female to Gruta with distinctive head tails and facial markings. The Clone Wars strain our resources across thousands of systems. Count Dooku leads the Separatist alliance with increasing aggression. Worlds burn while the Senate debates. We are concerned about introducing unknown variables into an already unstable situation. Luthor nodded thoughtfully, filing away every detail. Clone Wars. Count Dooku. Separatist aggression. Senate paralysis. A pattern emerged. The Jedi were losing, slowly but surely, and they knew it. I understand your caution, Luthor said. In your position, I'd be equally careful. However, I'd also suggest that unknown variables can be opportunities as well as threats. My technology comes from an entirely different scientific tradition. Perhaps fresh perspectives could benefit the Republic's defensive efforts. Weapons, you offer? Yoda asked sharply. Tools of war. I offer knowledge, Luthor corrected. What the Republic does with that knowledge would be the Republic's decision. Though I'll note, your enemies are using droid armies. Automated weapons platforms. From what I've learned, the Separatists have manufacturing advantages the Republic lacks. That seems problematic. The council members exchanged glances. Luthor recognized he'd touched a nerve. The Republic doesn't use slave labor, Mace Windu said firmly. Droids may be manufactured, but our clone troopers are living beings, trained and valued. Clone troopers. Luthor filed that away, another detail to investigate. The Republic was using clones as soldiers. Manufactured humans versus manufactured droids. The ethical implications were staggering, yet the Jedi seemed comfortable with one and opposed to the other. Hypocrites or pragmatists? Either way, exploitable. I meant no offense, Luthor said smoothly. I'm still learning the complexities of galactic politics. Perhaps that's why I should operate as an independent consultant rather than formally aligning with any faction. I could offer technological insights to the Republic Science Council, help repair my vessel, and avoid complicating your military situation. Neutrality in war is a luxury few can afford, Ki-Adi-Mundi observed. The Separatists would be equally interested in technology from beyond the known galaxy. Then I suppose I should be grateful the Republic found me first, Luthor replied with a carefully calibrated smile. And that the Jedi Council is wise enough to recognize that keeping me cooperative is preferable to driving me toward your enemies. The silence that followed was heavy with calculation. 12 Jedi Masters weighing options, sensing through their mystical force, trying to determine if the brilliant stranger represented opportunity or threat. Luthor knew what they'd conclude, the same thing every power structure concluded when dealing with Lex Luthor. That he was dangerous but manageable. Ambitious but controllable. Useful enough to exploit, not threatening enough to eliminate. They always underestimated him. It was humanity's greatest advantage. People expected humans to be limited, ordinary, beneath the notice of gods and monsters. By the time they realized their mistake, the game was already over. Very well, Mace Windu said finally. You may work with the Science Council under Republic supervision. But understand, we will be watching. And if you prove to be a threat to galactic peace, the Jedi will respond accordingly. Luthor bowed respectfully, the gesture perfect. I wouldn't expect anything less, Master Windu. Transparency and cooperation, it's how I've always conducted business. As he left the council chamber, Luthor's mind was already 3 moves ahead. He'd gained Republic resources, access to their technology, and most importantly, he'd identified their fatal weakness. The Jedi believed their force gave them insight into truth. They thought they could sense deception, read intentions, perceive the future. But Lex Luthor wasn't lying. Every word he'd spoken was technically true. He did want survival, prosperity, and understanding. He would work with the Republic Science Council. He would offer valuable knowledge. He simply had different long-term goals than they assumed. The Force couldn't predict what it couldn't comprehend. And Force users had spent millennia assuming their powers made them superior to ordinary minds. Lex Luthor had built a career proving that assumption fatal. 3 weeks after his arrival, Lex Luthor had transformed a damaged research station into a functional laboratory suite in Coruscant's industrial district. The Republic had provided resources, reluctantly, with oversight, but Luthor had provided results. His analysis of their hyperdrive technology had identified 3 efficiency improvements that increased fuel economy by 8%. His modifications to their shield generators reduced power consumption by 12%. Small gains, but enough to prove his value. Enough to earn trust. And trust was currency. The laboratory's main workspace hummed with activity as Luthor examined a disassembled blaster rifle through a holographic magnification field. Elegant design, the Tabana gas containment system was remarkably efficient. But the power cell was primitive compared to Earth's compact fusion technology. He could improve it. The question was whether he should. Impressive facility, a cultured voice said from the laboratory entrance. For someone who arrived with nothing but a broken ship and brilliant mind. Luthor turned, his expression neutral, and found himself facing a figure who radiated aristocratic authority. Tall, silver-bearded, wearing robes that spoke of wealth and taste. A curved lightsaber hilt hung from his belt, the weapon of a Jedi, yet something about this man felt different. Darker. More pragmatic. Count Dooku, Luthor said, recognizing him instantly from Republic intelligence briefs. Leader of the Separatist Alliance. Former Jedi Master who'd abandoned the Order. The man orchestrating a galactic civil war. I'm surprised the Republic's security allows the enemy commander to stroll into one of their industrial complexes. The Republic's security is one of many things suffering from institutional rot, Dooku replied, stepping into the laboratory with casual confidence. As for how I arrived undetected, the Force provides certain advantages. And I'm not here as an enemy commander, Mr. Luthor. I'm here as a curious scholar who's heard remarkable things about a man from beyond the stars. Luthor gestured to a seating area, his mind racing through scenarios. Please, sit. Though I should warn you, this conversation is almost certainly being monitored by Republic intelligence. Let them listen, Dooku said, settling into a chair with aristocratic grace. I've said nothing treasonous yet. I'm simply a citizen of the galaxy engaging in intellectual discourse with a fascinating newcomer. Perfectly legal, even during wartime. You were a Jedi Master, Luthor observed, pulling up 2 glasses and a bottle of Corellian whiskey he'd acquired through careful trading. 20 years on the Council, if the records are accurate. Then you walked away and founded a separatist movement. That suggests either profound disillusionment or extraordinary ambition. Dooku accepted the whiskey with an approving nod. Both, perhaps. I spent decades watching the Jedi Council serve a corrupt Senate, watching them become soldiers rather than peacekeepers, watching them compromise their principles for political convenience. The Republic is dying, Mr. Luthor. Not from separatist aggression, but from its own decay. I simply had the courage to acknowledge reality. Luthor sipped his own drink, studying Dooku with clinical interest. The man was dangerous, that much was obvious. But dangerous in a calculated way. Not a fanatic, despite leading a rebellion. A strategist playing a long game. And the Separatist Alliance offers something better? Luthor asked. A droid army funded by corporate interests. The Trade Federation, Banking Clan, and Techno Union don't strike me as altruistic reformers. They're tools, Dooku admitted with refreshing honesty. Means to an end. The Republic's bureaucracy has strangled innovation and freedom for 1,000 years. The Outer Rim worlds suffer while Coruscant grows fat on their labor. My movement offers those worlds genuine independence, the right to govern themselves without Senate interference. While you govern them instead, Luthor observed dryly. Dooku smiled, an expression of genuine amusement. You're remarkably perceptive for someone who's been in this galaxy less than a month. Yes, someone must lead. The alternative is chaos. But I would be a leader who understands that true power comes from competence, not mystical sensitivity to an energy field. You and I have that in common, I think. I'm not Force-sensitive, Luthor said, watching Dooku's reaction carefully. Precisely my point. Dooku leaned forward slightly, his voice taking on intensity. The Jedi Order recruits children based on midi-chlorian counts, a genetic lottery. They train these children to believe their Force sensitivity makes them superior, qualified to make decisions for trillions of beings who lack their gifts. Does that seem just to you, Mr. Luthor? Does that seem like the foundation for a healthy society? Luthor felt something click into place, recognition of a kindred philosophy, if not necessarily shared goals. Dooku wasn't simply rebelling against the Republic. He was rebelling against Force user supremacy itself. On my world, Luthor said carefully, we have beings with extraordinary abilities. I've spent considerable time studying how societies integrate powered individuals. The results are mixed. Power without accountability tends toward tyranny, even when the powerful have good intentions. Especially when they have good intentions, Dooku corrected. The Jedi believe so completely in their own righteousness that they've become blind to their failures. They fight this war as generals while the Senate that commands them grows more corrupt by the day. They sense the dark side rising yet fail to see how their own actions feed it. You sound like a man describing a rigged game, Luthor observed. Because it is a rigged game, Dooku said with sudden passion. The galaxy's power structures are designed to perpetuate Force user dominance. The Jedi serve the Senate, but the Senate defers to the Jedi. The Sith operate from shadows, manipulating events, but they too believe Force users should rule. Both sides assume their mystical powers grant them authority over ordinary beings. Luthor set down his glass, his expression thoughtful. And you see yourself as what? A reformer? Someone who'll break the cycle? I see myself as a realist, Dooku replied. The Force is a tool, Mr. Luthor. A powerful tool, but ultimately just a tool. And tools should serve those who wield them, not the reverse. Your technology demonstrates this principle beautifully. You've achieved with science what many Force users accomplish through mysticism. You've proven that intelligence can match or exceed inherent power. Flattery, Count Dooku. Observation, Dooku corrected. And an offer. The Confederacy of Independent Systems needs minds like yours. We have manufacturing capacity the Republic can only dream of. We have resources, planets, entire sectors eager for technological advancement. Your knowledge could accelerate our efforts substantially. And betray the Republic that's currently hosting me, Luthor said evenly. The Republic that's monitoring your every move? Dooku countered. The Republic whose Jedi Council looks at you with barely concealed suspicion? The Republic that sees you as a useful asset to be exploited and discarded when convenient? Don't mistake their civility for respect, Mr. Luthor. To them, you're a curiosity. A talented baseline human who'll never be more than that. The word struck deeper than Luthor cared to admit. He'd seen that look in the council chamber, the subtle condescension of beings who believed their Force sensitivity made them inherently superior. The same look Superman gave him. The same look every metahuman on Earth gave ordinary humans, whether they admitted it or not. I'm not convinced your separatist alliance is substantially better, Luthor said. Different masters, same cage. Dooku stood, his movement graceful despite his age. Then don't serve the Confederacy. Work with us as an independent contractor. Sell your services to both sides if you prefer. The Republic certainly won't object. They're desperate for any advantage. And I respect entrepreneurs who recognize that war creates opportunities for those clever enough to exploit them. You're suggesting I become an arms dealer, Luthor said flatly. I'm suggesting you be what you've always been, Dooku replied. A brilliant mind who recognizes that ideological purity is a luxury the pragmatic cannot afford. You didn't survive traveling between dimensions by being naive. Don't pretend to be naive now. Luthor walked to the laboratory window, gazing out at Coruscant's endless cityscape. Dooku's offer was tempting in its honesty. No pretense of moral superiority. No claims of serving the greater good. Just recognition that Luthor was a player in a galactic game, and players needed resources to make their moves. If I were to consider consulting for the Confederacy, Luthor said slowly, I'd need assurances. Protection from Republic retaliation. Access to your manufacturing facilities. And complete autonomy. I work with you, not for you. Acceptable terms, Dooku agreed. Though I'd add one condition of my own, transparency about your ultimate goals. I've lived too long to trust someone without understanding what drives them. What do you really want from this galaxy, Lex Luthor? Luthor turned back to face Dooku, his expression calculating. What I've always wanted. To prove that humanity, ordinary, baseline humanity, doesn't need gods or Force users or mystical powers to shape its destiny. That intelligence, properly applied, is the greatest power in the universe. And if that requires toppling the Jedi Order? Dooku asked. If it requires destabilizing the Republic they serve? Then I suppose we have more in common than I initially thought, Luthor replied. Dooku smiled, not the warm smile of a politician, but the cold satisfaction of a strategist recognizing a valuable piece on the board. I'll have my people contact you through secure channels. In the meantime, continue your work with the Republic Science Council. Prove your value to them. And when you're ready to expand your operations, the Confederacy will provide everything you need. After Dooku left, Luthor stood in his laboratory's silence, his mind processing the conversation's implications. He'd just been recruited by the enemy, or more accurately, he'd just opened negotiations with a second client. The Republic thought he worked for them. Dooku thought he'd work for the Confederacy. Neither understood that Lex Luthor worked exclusively for himself. But Dooku had revealed something crucial, a fundamental flaw in this galaxy's power structure. Both sides assumed Force users should lead. Both sides built their strategies around mystical warriors. Both sides underestimated what a sufficiently brilliant human mind could accomplish without any special powers whatsoever. Luthor pulled up holographic star charts, overlaying them with economic data, military deployments, and political allegiances. A galaxy at war. Trillions of beings caught between failing institutions. Force users on both sides claiming moral authority while the non-sensitive masses bled and died. He'd seen this before. He'd fought this before. And now, with resources beyond Earth's wildest dreams, he would win. 6 months transformed Lex Luthor from dimensional castaway to industrial power broker. The salvaged components from his research station, combined with Republic manufacturing contracts and discrete separatist funding, had evolved into LexCorp Galactic, a modest corporate entity by Coruscant standards, but growing with calculated precision. The facility occupied 3 levels in Coruscant's factory district, where the city planet's endless consumption demanded constant production. Luthor had chosen the location deliberately, close enough to Republic oversight to appear legitimate, deep enough in industrial zones to maintain operational security. The workers were mostly non-humans, Celestins, Duros, Bith. Species the Republic's human-dominated Senate often overlooked. Species grateful for fair wages and competent leadership. Luthor stood in the primary manufacturing bay, watching automated assembly lines produce power converters based on his hybrid Earth Republic technology. 40% more efficient than standard models. The Republic Defense Procurement Office had placed orders for 50,000 units. The Techno Union, through carefully laundered intermediaries, had ordered 30,000. Neither side knew the other was buying from the same source. Production efficiency is up 12% this week, reported Nyla Bress, a Twi'lek engineer Luthor had poached from the Republic Science Council with a 40% salary increase. The new assembly protocols you designed cut manufacturing time significantly. At this rate, we'll fulfill both contracts ahead of schedule. Excellent work, Luthor said, reviewing holographic production metrics. Increase quality control inspections by 20%. I want 0 defects in either shipment. Our reputation is built on reliability. Both shipments? Nyla asked carefully. She was smart enough to recognize that LexCorp Galactic served multiple clients, discreet enough not to ask uncomfortable questions. The specifications are identical. Business is business, Luthor replied smoothly. The galaxy is at war. Both sides need equipment. We provide it without taking political positions. Switzerland remained neutral during Earth's worst conflicts and prospered accordingly. Nyla nodded, though her expression suggested doubt. The Jedi Council has been asking questions. Master Windu sent an inquiry about our client list yesterday. And you referred him to our legal department, which explained that Republic privacy statutes protect corporate client information, Luthor said. The Jedi may serve the Republic, but they don't override its laws. Not yet, anyway. He'd studied the Republic's legal frameworks exhaustively, 10,000 years of accumulated legislation, loopholes, and bureaucratic complexity. The system was designed by lawyers for lawyers, creating enough ambiguity that a sufficiently clever operator could navigate between legality and ethics without technically violating either. Luthor had always excelled at that particular navigation. Sir, you have a visitor, said one of his security droids, modified B-1 units reprogrammed with better combat algorithms and loyalty protocols. Jedi Master Shock T requests an audience. Luthor's expression remained neutral, though internally he calculated scenarios. Shock T was the Togruta Council member who'd questioned him during his initial evaluation. Perceptive, cautious, but seemingly more pragmatic than some of her colleagues. Show her to conference room 3, Luthor instructed. And Nyla, increase security monitoring on all external communications. If the Jedi are making personal visits, they're concerned about something. The conference room overlooked Coruscant's industrial canyons, where cargo ships moved through vertical traffic lanes in endless streams. Shaak Ti stood at the window when Luthor entered, her distinctive head tails and facial markings giving her an exotic elegance. "Master T," Luthor greeted warmly. "To what do I owe the pleasure? If the Council has concerns about my work with the Science Council, I assure you every project has been cleared through proper channels." "Your work with the Republic is exemplary," Shaak Ti replied, turning to face him. Her expression was difficult to read, neither hostile nor friendly. "Perhaps too exemplary. You've integrated into our society with remarkable speed for someone from beyond our galaxy." "I'm adaptable," Luthor said, gesturing to seats. "And I recognize that survival requires understanding local customs. Is there a specific concern?" Shaak Ti settled into a chair with practiced grace. "The Force grants us certain insights, Mr. Luthor. Not omniscience, but awareness. For months, I've sensed ripples around you. Not the dark side, precisely. Not deception in the traditional sense. But something I cannot quite identify." "I'm Force null," Luthor reminded her. "Your own medical scans confirmed it. Perhaps what you sense is simply the absence of something you're accustomed to perceiving." "Perhaps," Shaak Ti acknowledged. "Or perhaps you're so accustomed to operating without Force sensitivity that you've developed methods to navigate around it. Methods that create blind spots." Luthor allowed himself a slight smile. "Are you suggesting I've found a way to deceive Jedi Force sensing through sheer baseline human ingenuity? That would be quite an achievement." "It would," Shaak Ti agreed, her tone neutral. "And it's exactly the kind of achievement that would concern the Council. We've allowed you considerable freedom because you've proven valuable and because we sensed no malicious intent. But valuable assets can become dangerous liabilities if we discover we've misjudged their nature." "Master T, I've been transparent about my goals," Luthor said, his voice carrying perfect sincerity. "I want to rebuild my resources, understand this galaxy, and establish myself as a contributing member of society. I've shared technology with the Republic. I've employed hundreds of beings. I've paid taxes and followed regulations. What more would the Council require?" Shaak Ti studied him with those alien eyes, and Luthor felt the weight of her attention, not threatening, but thorough. "The Council requires nothing more. But I would ask you, personally, to consider the consequences of your actions. This galaxy is fragile. The war strains bonds that have held for millennia. New variables can tip balances in unpredictable ways." "I understand," Luthor said. "And I appreciate the Council. Though I'd note that your Council also represents a variable. The Jedi have taken military command across hundreds of systems. You've transformed from peacekeepers into generals. That too tips balances, doesn't it?" Shaak Ti's expression shifted slightly, acknowledgement of the point, perhaps, or discomfort with its accuracy. "We serve the Republic as circumstances demand. It's not a role we sought. Neither did I seek to arrive in this galaxy," Luthor countered gently. "Yet here we are, both adapting to circumstances beyond our initial choosing. The difference is that I don't claim moral authority to guide my decisions. I'm simply a businessman trying to survive. And businessmen profit from war," Shaak Ti observed. "Businessmen profit from providing goods and services people need," Luthor corrected. "If those needs arise from conflict, that's a reflection of the conflict, not the business. Should I refuse to manufacture power converters because the Republic uses them in warships? Should I decline contracts because my products might end up in combat zones?" "No," Shaak Ti admitted. "But you should consider whether your products might reach both combat zones. Both sides of this war." There it was, the real reason for her visit. They suspected he was dealing with the Separatists but couldn't prove it. The Jedi were fishing, hoping he'd reveal something through his reaction. Luthor met her gaze steadily. Master T, if the Republic has evidence that I've violated any laws or regulations, I invite formal investigation. My records are available to authorized Republic officials. My facilities can be inspected. But if this is based on force sensing and intuition rather than evidence, then with all respect, I must continue operating as I have been, legally, ethically, and in full compliance with Republic statutes. Shak T stood, her movement fluid and controlled. Your records show nothing improper. Your facilities pass every inspection. Your employees speak highly of your fairness. And yet, the Force whispers warnings I cannot quite articulate. Perhaps I'm wrong. Perhaps you're exactly what you appear to be, a brilliant entrepreneur adapting to new circumstances. Or perhaps, Luthor suggested carefully, the Force whispers about the future, not the present. Perhaps what you sense isn't who I am, but who I might become. We all have that potential, Master T. The potential to be more than our current circumstances suggest. Shak T paused at the door, her head-tails swaying slightly. The future is always in motion. Choices matter, Mr. Luthor. The path you walk determines the destination you reach. I hope you choose wisely. After she left, Luthor returned to the window, watching Coruscant's endless activity. The Jedi were suspicious but lacked evidence. Good. Suspicion without proof was manageable. What concerned him more was Shak Ti's mention of Force whispers, precognition, presumably. The ability to sense future possibilities. That was a problem. On Earth, he'd faced telepaths and precognitives before. Batman had contingency plans. The Flash could see potential timelines. But Earth's precognitives were rare and limited. In this galaxy, there were thousands of Force sensitives, all potentially capable of glimpsing futures where Lex Luthor's plans came to fruition. He needed countermeasures. Not against the Force itself, that would come later, but against prediction. The solution was elegant: increase complexity. Create so many variables, so many simultaneous operations, so many interconnected threads that even Force-enhanced precognition couldn't track them all. Luthor activated his private holocommunicator, the one routed through 6 shell corporations and encrypted with algorithms from Earth that Republic slicers couldn't break. The blue holographic figure of a battle droid appeared, but this one spoke with Dooku's cultured accent. Mr. Luthor, the Count's voice emerged from the droid's vocabulator. I trust your meeting with the Jedi was enlightening. You're monitoring my facility, Luthor observed without surprise or anger. Efficient. I monitor my investments, Dooku corrected. You fulfilled every contract ahead of schedule. The Techno Union is impressed. As am I. But I sense you're preparing to expand operations. The Jedi are asking questions, Luthor said bluntly. I need more distance from Republic oversight. The Outer Rim offers opportunities, systems where Republic presence is minimal and Separatist control is flexible. You want to build facilities in Confederacy space, Dooku concluded. Establish a manufacturing base outside Republic jurisdiction. I want to diversify, Luthor corrected. Reduce dependency on any single government. LexCorp Galactic should operate across multiple sectors, serving multiple clients, answerable to none exclusively. That's how Earth corporations achieve true power, by transcending national boundaries. There was a pause as Dooku considered this. You're not content being a Republic contractor who occasionally does business with the Separatists. You want to become a third power. Independent of both our governments. I want to become what I've always been, Luthor replied. A force unto myself. The question is whether your Confederacy can accept that arrangement or whether you'll try to control me the way the Republic wants to. The Confederacy was founded on principles of independence, Dooku said slowly. Systems governing themselves without central authority. It would be hypocritical to deny you the same autonomy. I'll provide coordinates for 3 systems where you could establish facilities, Hyperi, Geonosis, and Mustafar. All have industrial capacity and minimal oversight. And all are deep in Separatist territory, Luthor noted. Which means if the Republic discovers my operations there, it's proof of collaboration. Risk and reward, Mr. Luthor, Dooku said with audible amusement. You can't build an empire without taking calculated risks. Though I suspect you've already calculated this one thoroughly. Luthor smiled, the expression cold and satisfied. I'll begin operations within a month. And Count Dooku, when this war ends, whichever side claims victory will find that LexCorp Galactic has become too valuable to eliminate and too powerful to control. That's the empire I'm building. One that survives regime changes. Ambitious, Dooku acknowledged. I look forward to seeing whether your brilliance matches your confidence. The galaxy has humbled many who thought themselves superior to circumstance. The galaxy has never encountered Lex Luthor, Luthor replied, and terminated the connection. He stood alone in his conference room, gazing out at a city-planet of trillions, at a galaxy of quadrillions, at resources and opportunities beyond Earth's imagination. The Jedi thought he was a businessman. Dooku thought he was an ally. The Republic thought he was an asset. None of them understood that Lex Luthor was building something none of them could stop, proof that ordinary human intelligence could dominate a galaxy ruled by mystical powers. The game had barely begun. The Jedi Temple's archives were legendary, the most comprehensive repository of knowledge in the known galaxy, containing millions of holocrons, data crystals, and ancient texts spanning thousands of years. Luthor had requested access 3 times through official Republic channels. 3 times he'd been politely denied. The archives were for Jedi and authorized scholars only. Ordinary beings, no matter how brilliant, were not permitted. Which was why Luthor now stood in the archives at 0300 hours, surrounded by towering shelves of ancient knowledge, completely unauthorized. The security breach had taken 4 months to engineer. Republic slicers were competent, but Luthor had designed quantum encryption systems that had frustrated Batman's best hackers. The temple's security relied heavily on Force-sensitive guards who could detect intruders through mystical awareness. Luthor had solved that problem with elegant simplicity. He'd hired a Force-sensitive. Not a Jedi. Not even a light side practitioner. A former Jedi Padawan named Quinlan Voss who'd been expelled from the Order for questionable methods and now worked as a freelance operative. Voss's presence in the temple created enough Force noise to mask Luthor's complete absence of midi-chlorians. To any Jedi sensing for intruders, it would feel like a familiar signature wandering the archives at an odd hour. By the time they investigated, Luthor would be gone. Expensive, but effective. Luthor moved through the darkened halls with practiced silence, following holographic maps he'd constructed from stolen architectural data. His target was Section 781C, Force Theory and midi-chlorian research. The Jedi guarded information about the Force jealously, treating it as sacred knowledge rather than scientific data. That attitude represented everything wrong with Force user culture. Knowledge should be analyzed, tested, exploited. Not hoarded like religious scripture. The section was smaller than he'd expected, perhaps 50 data terminals and a few hundred holocrons arranged in neat rows. Luthor activated a portable data extraction device, a hybrid of Earth computing and Republic technology that could interface with any system he'd encountered so far. The Jedi's security protocols were sophisticated but ultimately predictable. They protected against Force-based intrusions and conventional slicing. They didn't account for someone using completely alien algorithmic approaches. The first terminal unlocked in 40 seconds. Luthor began downloading everything: research papers on midi-chlorian concentrations, studies of Force-sensitive populations, genetic analysis of Jedi bloodlines, theories about the Force's nature and origin. The data flooded into his device's quantum storage, terabytes of information the Jedi had accumulated over millennia. One file caught his attention: Project Equilibrium, classified Jedi Council eyes only. Luthor opened it, his eyes scanning the contents rapidly. It was a research initiative from 200 years ago, studying Force null individuals and whether their lack of midi-chlorians represented biological deficiency or evolutionary adaptation. The findings were fascinating. Force null beings weren't broken or inferior. They represented a stable genetic baseline that preceded force sensitivity. Midi-chlorians had emerged as a symbiotic mutation, possibly engineered by an ancient civilization. The implications were staggering. Force sensitivity wasn't natural dominance, it was biological modification. The Jedi were post-human, genetically altered descendants of baseline humans and aliens. And they'd built an entire religious philosophy around their mutation, claiming it gave them moral authority to guide the galaxy. It was exactly what Luthor had suspected. Exactly what he'd seen on Earth with metahumans. Power structures built on genetic accidents, justified through mythology and tradition. Fascinating reading, isn't it? A voice said from behind him. Luthor's hand moved to the blaster concealed in his jacket, but he didn't draw. Turning slowly, he found himself facing a hooded figure whose face was hidden in shadow. The voice was aged, rasping, almost mechanical. And the presence, even Force null Luthor could feel the weight of it, radiated pure malevolence. "I'm impressed," the figure continued, stepping slightly closer. "Breaking into the Jedi Temple. Stealing their most sacred knowledge. You're either brilliantly bold or suicidally foolish. Perhaps both." "I'm neither," Luthor replied calmly, his mind racing through identification protocols. The voice, the presence, the theatrical intimidation, this wasn't a Jedi. "I'm simply acquiring information that should never have been restricted. Knowledge belongs to those capable of understanding it, not those who claim mystical authority." The figure laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Well spoken. Tell me, Lex Luthor of Earth, what do you see when you look at the Force?" "Most beings see magic, destiny, divine purpose. What does a mind like yours perceive?" "A exploitable energy field," Luthor said without hesitation. "Measurable, predictable, subject to natural laws we simply haven't fully documented yet. The Jedi treat it as religion because mysticism reinforces their power structure. But any sufficiently analyzed magic becomes science." "Yes," the figure hissed with obvious satisfaction. "Yes. You understand. The Force is a tool, nothing more. The Jedi have spent 10,000 years pretending otherwise because acknowledging the truth would undermine their authority. They're frauds, Luthor. Beautiful, noble frauds who genuinely believe their own propaganda." Luthor studied the figure carefully, noting the mechanical breathing apparatus, the life support systems visible beneath the robes. "You're not Dooku. His Force presence feels different, colder but more controlled. You're someone else. Someone who's been watching me." "I've been watching everyone," the figure replied. "I've been orchestrating this war from shadows, manipulating both sides, waiting for the moment when the Republic collapses and something stronger rises from its ashes. And then you arrived, a variable I didn't anticipate. A baseline human with the audacity to steal from the Jedi and the brilliance to succeed." Realization crystallized. Darth Sidious. The Sith Lord Dooku mentioned. The one orchestrating the separatist leadership. Perceptive, Sidious acknowledged. "Though Dooku believes I'm his ally, his partner in reshaping the galaxy. He doesn't understand that he's merely another piece on the board. Like the Jedi. Like the Republic. Like you, potentially." "I'm no one's piece," Luthor said flatly. "No." Sidious moved closer, his presence oppressive despite, or perhaps because of, Luthor's Force null nature. "You play both sides of this war. You think yourself clever, independent, building an industrial empire while the galaxy tears itself apart. But you're operating within parameters I established. Every move you make serves my ultimate design. Then why reveal yourself?" Luthor countered. "If I'm so thoroughly controlled, why risk exposing your involvement?" Sidious stopped 3 meters away, and even in shadow Luthor could feel the smile in his voice. "Because you're too intelligent to remain ignorant much longer. You would have discovered my influence eventually. Better to approach you directly, offer partnership rather than have you become an obstacle that requires elimination. You want to recruit me, Luthor concluded. Like you recruited Dooku. Another brilliant mind serving Sith interests. I want to offer you understanding, Sidious corrected. Dooku serves because he believes in the separatist cause, because he thinks we're building something better than the Republic. He's an idealist, for all his pragmatism. But you and I, Luthor, we're realists. We understand that power is its own justification. That the strong should rule the weak. That sentiment is a luxury the ambitious cannot afford. Luthor considered this, his mind working through implications. Sidious was right about one thing, they were similar in their fundamental pragmatism. Both recognized that morality was often a constraint the powerful imposed on the powerless. Both understood that systems changed through calculated disruption, not idealistic reform. But there was a critical difference. You want to rule the galaxy, Luthor said slowly. Replace the Republic with an empire, presumably. Eliminate the Jedi, establish Sith dominance. You're swapping one Force user oligarchy for another. I'm establishing order, Sidious replied. The Republic has proven that democracy leads to paralysis. The Jedi have proven that light side philosophy leads to weakness. The dark side offers strength, certainty, power without hesitation. And yes, Force users will rule. Because the Force is real, Luthor. It's not just energy to be analyzed. It's the fundamental nature of reality itself. Then we have philosophical differences, Luthor said. I don't oppose Force users because I doubt the Force exists. I oppose them because genetic lottery shouldn't determine who holds power. You want Sith supremacy. I want human supremacy, baseline human supremacy. Proving that intelligence matters more than midi-chlorian counts. Sidious was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his tone had shifted, less intimidating, more calculating. An interesting position. Ultimately futile, but interesting. Tell me, Luthor, what happens when your brilliant human mind faces a Sith Lord who can crush starships with the Force? When your technology confronts power that can manipulate reality itself? I've faced gods before, Luthor replied coldly. On Earth, I fought a being who could move planets, survive nuclear explosions, and see through solid matter. I didn't defeat him through Force powers or mystical abilities. I defeated him through planning, preparation, and understanding his weaknesses. Every power has limitations. Every god can bleed. Superman, Sidious said, and Luthor's blood ran cold. Yes, I've reviewed the data from your research station. Fascinating adversary. But Superman held back, didn't he? His morality restrained him. He could have killed you 1,000 times but chose mercy. The Sith don't make that mistake. Luthor's hand moved fractionally closer to his concealed blaster. Is this a threat? This is an education, Sidious replied. You're brilliant, Luthor. Perhaps the most brilliant baseline human I've encountered in decades. But brilliance without power is theoretical. In this galaxy, Force users dominate because the Force itself is ultimate power. You can fight it, many have tried. Or you can accept reality and find your place within the existing hierarchy. I've never been good at accepting existing hierarchies, Luthor said. I prefer dismantling them. Sidious laughed again, that mechanical rasp echoing through the archives. Then we'll meet again, Lex Luthor. As enemies, perhaps. Or as reluctant allies when you realize the galaxy's power structures cannot be dismantled through technology alone. The war accelerates. Events are in motion. And when the Republic falls, every being in this galaxy will choose sides. I've already chosen, Luthor said. My own. We'll see, Sidious replied, and then he was simply gone, not walking away, not fading into shadow, just absent as if he'd never been there at all. Luthor stood in the archive's silence, his heart rate elevated despite his controlled exterior. The encounter had revealed several critical facts. Sidious was far more powerful than Dooku. Sidious had been monitoring him since arrival. And most importantly, Sidious saw Luthor as potential threat significant enough to warrant personal attention. Good. Luthor returned to his data extraction, downloading everything he could before Quinlan Voss's distraction ended. The files on midi-chlorians, Force theory, Sith history, Jedi techniques, all of it flowed into his storage device. Knowledge was power. And if Sidious wanted an empire ruled by Force users, then Lex Luthor would provide the opposition. Not through idealism or heroism, but through cold scientific analysis of how to neutralize Force-based abilities. Superman could be defeated with kryptonite, a specific physical weakness. Martian Manhunter feared fire, a psychological vulnerability. Wonder Woman could be bound with her own lasso, a mystical limitation. Every power had a counter. Even the Force. Luthor just had to find it. The Geonosis facility rose from red desert rock like a fortress of ambition, 3 square kilometers of manufacturing capacity, power generation, and research laboratories built in 8 months through separatist funding and Luthor's relentless efficiency. Officially, it was a Confederate droid factory producing B-2 super battle droids under Techno-Union supervision. Unofficially, it was LexCorp Galactic's primary research and development complex, where Luthor pursued projects neither the Republic nor Separatists fully understood. Luthor stood in the central laboratory, watching holographic displays showing simultaneous operations across 12 systems. Power converters to the Republic. Shield generators to the Separatists. Blaster components to independent systems. Medical equipment to neutral worlds. And beneath it all, hidden in encrypted subsidiary operations, weapons technology that served Luthor's agenda exclusively. Production quotas exceeded across all divisions, reported Nyla Bress, who'd relocated to Geonosis to oversee operations. Republic contracts fulfilled at 106%. Confederate orders at 108%. Both clients have submitted requests for expanded partnerships. Deny both, Luthor instructed, manipulating holographic financial projections. Scarcity increases value. Let them compete for our capacity rather than assuming unlimited access. And how's the special project? Nyla glanced at the laboratory's other occupants, technicians and engineers from a dozen species, all focused on their work, before lowering her voice. Project Nullifier is proceeding ahead of schedule. The prototype is ready for field testing. Luthor felt satisfaction settle over him like armor. Project Nullifier, his answer to Force supremacy. 8 months of research synthesizing Earth physics, Republic technology, and stolen Jedi archives data into something this galaxy had never conceived. A device that could disrupt midi-chlorian activity at the cellular level. The Jedi Temple data had been invaluable. Midi-chlorians were symbiotic organisms residing in living cells, creating the connection to the Force. They functioned through a form of quantum entanglement with the Force's underlying energy field. Disrupt that entanglement, generate specific electromagnetic frequencies that interfered with midi-chlorian neural signaling, and Force sensitivity became temporarily inert. It was elegant. Ruthless. And it would prove that technology could neutralize powers that had dominated the galaxy for millennia. Show me, Luthor said. Nyla led him to an isolated testing chamber with observation windows and reinforced walls. Inside stood a humanoid target dummy wired with midi-chlorian concentration sensors, samples extracted from captured separatist prisoners and cloned for research purposes. A basketball-sized device mounted on a tripod pointed at the dummy, its surface covered in emitters arranged in geometric patterns. We've tested it on cloned tissue samples, Nyla explained. Midi-chlorian activity drops by 78% within a 10-meter radius. Duration approximately 30 minutes before natural cellular repair restores function. No permanent biological damage, but complete Force disruption during exposure. 78%. Not complete nullification, but enough to cripple Force user abilities. A Jedi's precognition would fail. Their telekinesis would weaken. Their lightsaber combat, which relied heavily on force-enhanced reflexes, would become merely human-level skill. Level playing field. Finally. Power requirements? Luthor asked. Substantial, Nyla admitted. Current prototype requires a dedicated generator. We're working on miniaturization, but the physics are challenging. The frequencies must be precise, too low and they're ineffective, too high and they damage non-midi-chlorian cellular structures. Acceptable for now, Luthor said, studying the device with proprietary satisfaction. Begin production of 12 units. Infantry portable versions are lower priority than facility defense systems. If Jedi or Sith attack our installations, I want them walking into technological dead zones. Sir, one of the engineers called out, a Neimoidian with nervous energy. We're detecting incoming ships. Multiple contacts, military configuration. Luthor moved to the command center, watching sensor displays populate with data. 6 Republic gunships approaching from orbit, escorted by starfighters. Heavy armor. Assault configuration. Not an inspection. A raid. How did they find us? Nyla asked, tension in her voice. They didn't, Luthor replied calmly, his mind already processing scenarios. Someone told them. The question is who benefits from Republic forces attacking a separatist facility. The answer came immediately, Sidious. The Sith Lord wanted chaos, wanted both sides committed to total war. A Republic strike on LexCorp Galactic would force Luthor to choose sides definitively. Either he'd fight back and become official Confederate property, or he'd surrender and lose everything he'd built. Sidious was eliminating variables. Forcing pieces into predetermined positions. Battle stations, Luthor ordered, activating facility-wide alarms. Activate all defensive turrets. Seal critical research areas. And get Project Nullifier operational immediately. Sir, we haven't completed safety testing. Now, Nyla, Luthor snapped. If Jedi are aboard those gunships, I want every advantage we can manufacture. The facility's defenses came online, automated blaster turrets, shield generators, surface-to-air missile batteries. Not enough to stop a determined Republic assault, but enough to buy time. Geonosis was separatist territory, Confederate reinforcements would arrive eventually. The question was whether Luthor's facility would survive long enough. The gunships descended through Geonosis's atmosphere, their formation precise and professional. Clone troopers, the Republic's manufactured soldiers, genetically identical and trained for absolute obedience. Luthor had studied them extensively. Superior to battle droids in adaptability and initiative, but psychologically conditioned for loyalty to Jedi commanders. Which meant Jedi were definitely present. Incoming transmission, the communications officer reported. Republic frequency, demanding our surrender. Put it through, Luthor said. The holographic projector displayed a Jedi Master, Mace Windu, his expression hard as Durasteel. Lex Luthor. By authority of the Galactic Senate and Jedi Council, you're under arrest for treason, arms dealing with separatist forces, and technology theft from Republic facilities. Surrender immediately and you'll receive fair trial. Master Windu, Luthor replied smoothly, his tone betraying none of his racing thoughts. I operate legally under Confederate jurisdiction. This facility is registered with the Techno-Union and pays taxes to Geonosis's planetary government. The Republic has no authority here. The Republic has authority wherever its enemies operate, Windu countered. We know you've been supplying both sides. We know you infiltrated the Jedi Temple. We know you're developing weapons technology that threatens galactic stability. This facility will be secured by Republic forces. Resist and we will use lethal force. There it was, the Jedi's true face. Democracy and justice until someone operated outside their control, then military force and unilateral action. They claimed moral authority but exercised power through violence. Just like Superman. just like every self-appointed guardian Luthor had ever opposed. "I see," Luthor said quietly. "The Republic speaks of law and justice, but when the law doesn't serve your purposes, you simply ignore it. How very pragmatic." "This is your final warning," Windu said, and terminated the connection. The gunships opened fire. Laser cannons hammered LexCorp Galactic's shields, draining power reserves with each impact. Clone troopers repelled from hovering transports, establishing perimeter positions. And through the observation windows, Luthor saw 3 robed figures leap from a gunship with impossible grace, Jedi, lightsabers igniting as they landed, deflecting automated turret fire with casual precision. "Nullifier active," Nyla reported. "Radius set to maximum. Powering up." Luthor watched the Jedi advance, Mace Windu leading, flanked by 2 other masters he didn't recognize. Their movements were fluid, enhanced by force precognition. Blaster bolts curved around them, repelled by lightsaber blade work that bordered on supernatural. Until they crossed into the nullifier's effective range. The change was subtle but immediate. Windu's stride faltered slightly. His lightsaber work became fractionally less precise. One of the flanking Jedi stumbled as a blaster bolt got through his defense, striking his shoulder armor. Not the effortless mastery of moments before, now they moved like skilled humans rather than mystical warriors. "It's working," Nyla breathed. "The Jedi are weakened." 78% isn't enough, Luthor said, watching Windu adapt to the disruption with impressive speed. "They're still dangerous. Still enhanced beyond baseline human. But it proves the concept, force abilities can be technologically suppressed." The Jedi reached the facility's main entrance, cutting through the reinforced doors with lightsabers. Clone troopers poured in behind them, moving with military efficiency. LexCorp security droids engaged, but they were outmatched. Republic soldiers were trained specifically to fight droids. "Evacuate non-essential personnel," Luthor ordered. "Secure all research data. And activate Protocol Omega." Protocol Omega, facility self-destruct. Luthor had learned long ago that sometimes the best victory was denying the enemy their objective. If the Republic wanted to shut down his operations, he'd ensure they captured nothing of value. "Evacuation ships launching," Nyla reported. "Research cores being wiped. Omega sequence initiated, detonation in 15 minutes. "Good," Luthor said, pulling on the sleek armor he'd kept in his office, a hybrid design combining Earth military gear with Mandalorian Beskar plating he'd acquired through underworld contacts. Not a warsuit like his Earth technology, but functional protection. "I'm going to delay our uninvited guests." "Sir, that's suicide," Nyla protested. "It's necessary," Luthor corrected, checking his blaster's charge. "The Jedi can't know how much data we've extracted. They need to believe everything was destroyed in the fighting. That requires someone present to coordinate the performance." He moved through the facility's corridors, following security feeds that showed the Republic's inexorable advance. Clone troopers clearing rooms with professional precision. Jedi moving toward the central laboratory with weakened but still present force senses. Windu was following something, probably the nullifier's energy signature, recognizing it as a threat worth prioritizing. "Good. Let him come." Luthor reached the laboratory first, positioning himself behind portable cover with a heavy blaster rifle. Around him, the nullifier hummed with active power, its field saturating the area with midi-chlorian disrupting frequencies. He could see the research data being erased in real time, gigabytes of force theory, midi-chlorian studies, weapon specifications, all disappearing into quantum encryption that would take Republic slicers years to crack. The laboratory door exploded inward, blown apart by the force despite the nullifier's interference. Weakened wasn't eliminated. Windu strode through, lightsaber blazing purple, his expression grim with determination. "Lex Luthor," he said, voice amplified by the combat situation. "Surrender. You've lost." "Have I?" Luthor replied, keeping his rifle trained on Windu's center mass. My personnel are evacuating. My data is being destroyed. This facility will detonate in 12 minutes. What exactly have you won, Master Windu? A pile of rubble? We've stopped you from arming the separatists, Windu countered. We've proven you're not the neutral industrialist you pretended to be. And we'll recover enough data to understand what you were developing here. You'll recover nothing, Luthor said coldly. But I have learned something valuable. Your force powers, the abilities you claim make you qualified to lead, can be neutralized. Technology can suppress what you've spent lifetimes cultivating. That device you sense. It's disrupting your midi-chlorians. Making you ordinary. Human. Windu's expression darkened. One device doesn't change the fundamental nature of the Force. No, Luthor agreed. But it proves a principle. And principles can be scaled. Imagine, Master Windu, a galaxy where Jedi can't rely on precognition. Where Sith can't dominate through telekinesis. Where Force users are reduced to the same level as everyone they've claimed superiority over for millennia. How long would your order survive without the genetic advantage you've mistaken for moral authority? The Jedi serve the Force and the Republic, Windu said, advancing slowly. Not power. Not superiority. Service. Then drop your lightsaber, Luthor challenged. Serve as an ordinary human would. No Force enhancement. No supernatural abilities. Just your training and wisdom. Prove your authority comes from character, not midi-chlorians. Windu didn't drop his weapon. Of course he didn't. Because they both knew the truth, remove Force powers and Jedi were simply people. Skilled people, trained people, but not inherently superior to any other dedicated professional. The timer reached 10 minutes. Facility detonation imminent. I'm leaving now, Luthor said, backing toward an emergency exit. You can follow me or you can try saving your clone troopers. Either way, this facility becomes a crater. Choose, Master Windu. Let one enemy escape or let dozens of soldiers die. Windu's jaw clenched, and Luthor saw the calculation in his eyes. The Jedi couldn't abandon the clones. Their entire philosophy demanded protecting life, even when tactical sense suggested otherwise. Evacuate. Windu commanded over his comlink, turning away from Luthor toward the facility's interior. All Republic forces, evacuate immediately. Luthor fled through the emergency tunnel, feeling the facility shake as internal detonations began their sequence. Behind him, the nullifier's hum cut off, either destroyed or powered down. The Jedi would escape. The clones would probably survive. But LexCorp Galactic's Geonosis facility would become a memory. An expensive memory. But one that proved Lex Luthor could challenge Force users on technological grounds and survive. When the facility exploded behind him, Luthor was already aboard an evacuation ship, watching through viewports as months of work vanished in fire. He felt no regret. Only satisfaction. The Republic had found one facility. They hadn't found the 5 others he'd established across separatist space. They'd destroyed one nullifier prototype. They hadn't discovered the detailed schematics already distributed to his other installations. And most importantly, they'd confirmed that Luthor's technology worked. That Force abilities could be suppressed. Mace Windu would report this to the Council. Sidious would hear about it. Both sides would realize that Lex Luthor represented a threat to Force user dominance. Good. Let them understand what was coming. The Senate building's observation deck offered a panoramic view of Coruscant's endless cityscape, but Supreme Chancellor Palpatine stood with his back to the windows, his aged face arranged in an expression of concerned sympathy. Luthor recognized the performance immediately. He'd given similar performances himself countless times. Mr. Luthor, Palpatine said warmly, gesturing to a seat. I'm relieved you survived the unfortunate incident on Geonosis. The Jedi Council's actions were overzealous. They exceeded their authority, and I've expressed my displeasure formally. Your concern is appreciated, Chancellor, Luthor replied, settling into the offered chair while his mind catalogued every detail of Palpatine's office. The man radiated political power, not force power, surprisingly. Sensors hidden in Luthor's clothing detected no midi-chlorian signature. Palpatine was baseline human, yet he'd risen to lead a galactic government. Interesting. Though I confess some confusion about jurisdiction. The Jedi claimed Senate authority for their raid. A misrepresentation, Palpatine said smoothly. The Senate authorized investigation, not military action. Master Windu interpreted his mandate, creatively. The Jedi have grown accustomed to autonomy. Sometimes they forget they serve the Republic, not rule it. Luthor heard the undercurrent of resentment beneath diplomatic phrasing. Palpatine didn't trust the Jedi either. Didn't like their independence, their power, their assumption of moral authority. Here was a baseline human who'd climbed to the galaxy's highest political office despite being Force null. The Clone Wars strain everyone, Luthor observed carefully. Even institutions as venerable as the Jedi Order. Stress reveals character, both good and bad. Wisely spoken, Palpatine agreed. I've watched the Jedi transform from peacekeepers into generals. They claim reluctance, but I see how readily they've embraced military command. Power has a way of justifying itself, doesn't it? It does, Luthor said. Which brings me to why I accepted your invitation, Chancellor. The Republic destroyed a significant investment on Geonosis. I'm entitled to compensation under Confederate industrial protection treaties. But I'm willing to negotiate alternative arrangements if the Republic demonstrates genuine interest in partnership rather than persecution. Palpatine's expression shifted subtly, calculation replacing sympathy. You're offering the Republic exclusive access to your technology. Despite your separatist contracts. I'm offering to prioritize Republic contracts, Luthor corrected. Exclusivity would require substantial incentives. But I recognize political reality. The Jedi Council believes I'm a threat. Proving otherwise through cooperation serves my interests better than escalating conflict. It was complete fabrication, of course. Luthor had no intention of prioritizing anyone's interests over his own. But Palpatine needed to believe he'd brought Luthor to heel, forced him to choose the Republic through a combination of military pressure and political inducement. Men like Palpatine needed to believe they were winning. The Republic can be very generous, Palpatine said slowly. Contracts worth billions of credits. Access to Research Council facilities. Protection from future Jedi overreach. All in exchange for your full cooperation and transparency about your technological developments. Transparency has limits, Luthor replied. Proprietary research remains proprietary. But I can share specific applications, power systems, shield technology, medical equipment. Technologies that benefit the war effort without compromising my competitive advantages. Palpatine studied him with sharp eyes that seemed to see more than an elderly politician should. You're remarkably composed for someone who lost a major facility. Most beings would show anger, fear, or at least frustration. You seem almost satisfied. I'm adaptable, Luthor said simply. Geonosis was unfortunate but not catastrophic. I've survived worse setbacks on Earth. The question isn't whether I can rebuild, but where and under whose jurisdiction. You're offering Republic support. That's valuable. And if I offered more? Palpatine asked quietly. Not just contracts and protection, but genuine political power. The Senate is paralyzed by factional disputes. Committees debate while worlds burn. But a chancellor has discretionary authority during wartime emergencies. I could appoint special industrial coordinators with sweeping powers to accelerate production, streamline bureaucracy, cut through the regulations strangling efficiency. Luthor's interest sharpened. You're offering me a government position. I'm offering you the authority to fix broken systems, Palpatine corrected. The Republic's industrial capacity is crippled by corruption and inefficiency. The Techno-Union serves the separatists because Republic contractors demand bribes and deliver inferior products. You've proven you can manufacture quality equipment ahead of schedule. Imagine what you could accomplish with official authority to reform the entire defense procurement apparatus. It was tempting. Genuine political power, legitimized through Republic appointment. Access to classified military data. Direct influence over strategic decisions. Everything Luthor would need to understand the Republic's vulnerabilities and exploit them systematically. But the offer came with chains. Palpatine wanted control, wanted Luthor embedded in Republic hierarchy where he could be monitored, managed, and ultimately eliminated if he became inconvenient. A generous offer, Luthor said carefully. Though I'd want assurances about autonomy. I work best without bureaucratic interference. Naturally, Palpatine agreed. The position would include emergency powers, the authority to override regulations, commandeer facilities, redirect resources as needed for the war effort. You'd report directly to my office, bypassing Senate committees and Jedi oversight. There it was, Palpatine wanted Luthor away from Jedi scrutiny. The Chancellor was consolidating power, gathering capable individuals under his direct authority while marginalizing the Jedi Council's influence. Luthor recognized the pattern because he'd executed similar strategies on Earth. Palpatine was building an empire. And he wanted Luthor as one of its architects. The realization clarified everything. Palpatine wasn't just a politician, he was the third player in this galactic game. Not Jedi, not separatist, but something else. Someone manipulating both sides toward an endgame only he fully understood. I accept in principle, Luthor said. Though I'd need time to review the position's legal parameters. I've learned to read contractual fine print carefully. Of course, Palpatine said, his smile warm but his eyes cold. My legal staff will provide complete documentation. In the meantime, consider yourself under Republic protection. No more Jedi raids. No more persecution. You have the Chancellor's personal guarantee. After the meeting, Luthor walked Coruscant's government district, processing implications. Palpatine wanted him neutered, turned into a Republic asset, dependent on government contracts, stripped of the independence that made him dangerous. The position was a golden cage. Which meant Palpatine recognized Luthor as a genuine threat. Good. His encrypted communicator vibrated, Dooku's contact frequency. Luthor found a private alcove and activated the holographic connection. The Count's aged face appeared, expression grim. The Republic destroyed your Geonosis facility, Dooku said without preamble. I've received reports. The Confederacy is willing to provide compensation and protection for your remaining installations. Generous, Luthor observed. Though I've just met with Chancellor Palpatine. He's offered Republic partnership and political appointment. Dooku's expression darkened. Palpatine. Of course. The Chancellor is more dangerous than he appears, Luthor. He plays a longer game than most realize. I'm aware, Luthor replied. Which is why I'm meeting with you now. The Republic wants me controlled. The Separatists want me aligned. But I suspect there's a third faction operating, someone manipulating both sides of this war toward predetermined outcomes. Dooku was silent for several seconds, his face carefully neutral. That's a serious accusation. What evidence supports this theory? Pattern recognition, Luthor said. This war benefits no one, not the Republic, which is bankrupting itself, and not the Separatists, who face extinction if they lose. Yet it continues escalating. Both sides make decisions that prolong conflict rather than achieving victory. That suggests external manipulation. The Sith, Dooku said quietly. You're Sith, Luthor countered. Or work with them. I've done my research. The curved lightsaber, the dark side philosophy, the rejection of Jedi teaching. You're not a fallen Jedi, you're a practicing Sith Lord. Dooku's expression shifted, not anger, but something like respect. You're perceptive. Yes, I follow the Sith philosophy. But I'm not the one manipulating this war. My master, Darth Sidious, he orchestrates events on both sides. I believed we were building something better than the Republic. Now I suspect I'm merely his tool, just as you suggested. The admission shocked Luthor, not its content, but its candor. Dooku was questioning his own role, recognizing his manipulation. That created opportunity. Then we have common cause, Luthor said carefully. Neither of us wants to be tools. Neither of us believes Force users should automatically rule the galaxy. What if we cooperated against Sidious? Identified him, exposed his manipulations, destabilized his plans? You're suggesting we betray my master, Dooku observed. The most powerful Sith in a millennium. I'm suggesting we survive, Luthor corrected. Sidious is using this war to destroy both the Republic and the Separatists. When it ends, he'll have eliminated every power structure that could oppose him. Including you, Count Dooku. You're too independent, too intelligent. He'll kill you the moment you stop being useful. Dooku's silence was answer enough. He'd already reached the same conclusion. What do you propose? Dooku asked finally. Intelligence sharing, Luthor replied. You have access to Sidious's plans, knowledge of his strategies. I have technology that can suppress force powers, level the playing field. Together, we can identify Sidious's identity and develop countermeasures. Separately, we're both expendable pieces on his board. Betraying a Sith master is suicide, Dooku warned. He'll sense deception through the Force. Not if we're careful, Luthor countered. Not if we use my Force null nature as cover. Sidious can't sense my intentions, I'm invisible to Force-based precognition. We communicate through me, you continue serving publicly while working against him privately, and we build contingencies he can't predict. Dooku studied Luthor through the hologram, weighing options. You hate Force users. Why ally with one, even temporarily? Because I hate being manipulated more than I hate Force users, Luthor replied honestly. And because defeating Sidious requires understanding Sith power structures. You're useful. For now. Charming, Dooku said dryly. Very well. We have an accord, temporary alliance against a mutual threat. I'll provide intelligence on Sidious's operations. You'll develop technological countermeasures. And neither of us betrays the other until Sidious is neutralized. After which we return to our respective agendas, Luthor agreed. After which, Dooku confirmed, we'll see whether your technology or my Force mastery prove superior. But that's a problem for later. The connection terminated, leaving Luthor alone with his thoughts. He'd just formed alliances with both the Republic Chancellor and the Separatist leader. Both believed they were manipulating him. Neither understood they were pieces in Luthor's game. And somewhere, Darth Sidious, whoever he truly was, orchestrated a war that would reshape the galaxy. A war Luthor now intended to hijack. 3 factions vying for dominance. Jedi, Sith, and baseline humans. Force users assumed their powers made them inevitable victors. They'd never faced Lex Luthor before. By the time they understood their mistake, the board would be his. He had reached its crescendo. 3 years of brutal conflict across thousands of systems, and now the endgame approached with terrible momentum. Luthor watched holographic battle reports from his command center on Mustafar, a facility built into volcanic rock, powered by geothermal energy, and shielded by 12 overlapping nullifier fields that made it a force-dead zone extending 3 kilometers in every direction. LexCorp Galactic had evolved beyond anyone's projections. 53 facilities across Republic and Separatist space. Manufacturing capacity exceeding the Techno-Union's entire output. Private security forces numbering in the hundreds of thousands, not droids, but living soldiers from species the Republic had ignored and the Separatists had exploited. Luthor paid them well, treated them fairly, and earned loyalty that no amount of force manipulation could break. And the nullifier technology, refined, miniaturized, weaponized. Every LexCorp facility was now a zone where Force users became ordinary. Every major client who purchased Luthor's equipment received complimentary, power regulation systems that coincidentally disrupted midi-chlorian function. The technology was spreading across the galaxy like a virus, and neither Jedi nor Sith could stop it because doing so required admitting their powers could be neutralized. Incoming transmission from Coruscant, reported Commander Tal, a Zabrak woman who'd served as Luthor's head of security for 18 months. Chancellor Palpatine. Priority 1 encryption. Luthor activated the holographic projector. Palpatine's image appeared, and for the first time in their relationship, the elderly politician's mask had slipped. His expression carried urgency, even fear. "Mr. Luthor," Palpatine said, his voice tight. "We need to speak. Privately. Immediately." "I'm listening, Chancellor," Luthor replied, gesturing for his staff to vacate the command center. When they were alone, he continued. "You seem distressed. Has something happened?" "The Jedi suspect," Palpatine said bluntly. "Master Yoda has been investigating anomalies in my Force presence. Mace Windu questions why I've granted you such extensive authority. They're close to discovering my true identity." Luthor felt pieces click into place with satisfying precision. "Your true identity. Darth Sidious. You're the Sith Master orchestrating both sides of this war." Palpatine's holographic image flickered with surprise, then settled into cold calculation. "You knew. How long?" "Since our first meeting," Luthor lied smoothly. He'd actually confirmed it 3 months ago through Dooku's intelligence, but letting Palpatine believe he'd been transparent from the beginning served Luthor's purposes better. "Your Force signature was absent despite your political power. Your maneuvering patterns matched separatist strategies too perfectly. And you kept me isolated from Jedi oversight while maintaining access to Republic resources. You were protecting your asset while building towards something larger. An empire, presumably." "Yes," Palpatine admitted, the pretense finally abandoned. "The Republic will fall. The Jedi will be destroyed. And from the ashes, I will forge an empire that brings order to this chaotic galaxy. But the Jedi are moving against me sooner than anticipated. I need your nullifier technology deployed immediately. Every remaining Jedi must be neutralized before they can expose me." "Order 66, Luthor said quietly, referencing the contingency protocol he discovered in classified clone trooper documentation. "You're going to activate the clones' behavioral modification programming. Turn them against their Jedi generals. The clones will handle most of the Jedi," Palpatine confirmed. "But the Council Masters are too powerful, too experienced. Even surprise attacks may fail against their Force precognition. Your nullifier fields would ensure success." Luthor walked to the command center's observation windows, gazing out at Mustafar's volcanic landscape. This was it, the moment when Sidious revealed his complete dependence on Luthor's technology. When the most powerful Sith in a millennium admitted he needed baseline human ingenuity to achieve his goals. "No," Luthor said simply. Palpatine's holographic face contorted with rage. "What did you say?" "I said no, Chancellor. Or should I call you Emperor? You want to replace the Republic with a Sith Empire. Trade Jedi supremacy for Sith dominance. Force user rule regardless of which philosophy claims moral authority. I didn't build nullifier technology to help one set of Force users exterminate another. I built it to prove that Force users don't deserve to rule at all. You dare refuse me?" Palpatine's voice dripped with venom. "I made you, Luthor. I gave you authority, protection, resources. Everything you've accomplished exists because I allowed it." "You allowed nothing," Luthor corrected coldly. "I earned everything through intelligence and planning. You thought you were using me, a convenient tool to suppress Force abilities while you consolidated power. But I've been using you. Republic resources to build my infrastructure. Separatist funding to establish independence. Sith intelligence to understand Force user vulnerabilities. And now, when you need my technology most desperately, I'm denying you access. Palpatine's Force presence exploded outward. Luthor's sensors detected the surge even at this distance, picked up the dark side energy radiating from Coruscant in waves of pure malevolence. Then you've chosen death. I will personally destroy everything you've built. Your facilities will burn. Your employees will die. And you will beg for mercy before I grant you the release of oblivion. Dramatic, Luthor observed. But strategically foolish. You're about to execute the Jedi. That requires your complete attention. You'll be fighting the most powerful Force users in the galaxy simultaneously. You don't have resources to waste on revenge against me. And by the time you've established your empire, I'll have distributed nullifier technology so widely that even your power won't be able to suppress it. You're bluffing, Palpatine snarled. You can't possibly have 14,000 systems, Luthor interrupted. That's how many have received nullifier-equipped power regulation systems in the past 8 months. Hidden in Republic medical facilities, separatist manufacturing plants, neutral world infrastructure. Everywhere. Every major population center in the galaxy now has the capacity to neutralize Force abilities within a 10-kilometer radius. I've done in 3 years what neither Jedi nor Sith accomplished in millennia. I've leveled the playing field. The silence that followed was profound. Palpatine's aged face cycled through emotions, rage, disbelief, calculation, and finally cold recognition. You've doomed the galaxy, Palpatine said quietly. Force users maintain order. Without us, civilization will collapse into chaos. The Jedi understood this. The Sith understood this. Even baseline humans depend on Force-sensitive leadership because you lack the strength to govern yourselves. That's the lie you've all told yourselves, Luthor replied. The comforting fiction that justifies your dominance. But Earth managed perfectly well without Force users. We built civilizations, reached space, developed technology that rivals anything in your galaxy, all without midi-chlorians or mystical powers. Humanity doesn't need gods. It needs competent leadership and functional systems. You're not necessary. You're just convenient. Then watch your utopian vision burn, Palpatine said viciously. I will execute Order 66. The Jedi will fall. And my empire will rise despite your interference. Your nullifier fields can't protect you when I come for you personally, Luthor. I'll tear your facilities apart, kill everyone you've employed, and ensure your name becomes a cautionary tale about baseline humans who forget their place. The transmission cut off, leaving Luthor in volcanic silence. Commander Tal returned immediately, her expression tense. Sir, we're detecting massive military movements. Republic clone forces deploying against Jedi positions across the galaxy. It's happening. Order 66, Luthor confirmed. Palpatine is making his move. How many of our nullifier installations are active? 87%, Tal reported. The systems that aren't active are in contested war zones where installation was delayed. Activate them all, Luthor ordered. Every nullifier field, maximum radius. And broadcast the activation codes publicly. I want every system in the galaxy to know that Force suppression technology exists and how to use it. Sir, that's proprietary technology. We'll lose competitive advantage. Execute the order, Luthor snapped. This isn't about profit anymore. It's about proving a principle. Force users don't get to determine the galaxy's future unchallenged. Baseline humanity gets a vote. And that vote starts now. Across the galaxy, nullifier fields activated. On Coruscant, Jedi Temple security systems suddenly dampened as midi-chlorians ceased functioning in surrounding districts. On Utapau, General Grievous found his Jedi opponent abruptly vulnerable as nearby installations came online. On Kashyyyk, Yoda sensed the Force itself fading in a radius around him as hidden systems activated. And in the Jedi Temple's High Council chamber, Mace Windu felt his Force senses dim as Palpatine, revealed as Darth Sidious, unleashed Force lightning with a rage that shook the building's foundations. But the lightning was weaker than it should have been. The Force was weaker than it should have been. Luthor's technology was bleeding the galaxy's mystical energy, one system at a time. "Sir," Tal reported urgently, "we're detecting a massive Force presence approaching Mustafar. It's Dooku, and he's not alone." The holographic display showed a separatist cruiser entering orbit, but the shuttle that launched from it carried only 2 passengers. Dooku's signature was obvious. The second presence was unfamiliar, powerful, disciplined, young. "Let them land," Luthor said. "Dooku and I have an arrangement. He's choosing sides." The shuttle descended to Mustafar's landing platform, and 2 robed figures emerged. Dooku looked aged, tired, years of war and betrayal wearing on him visibly. His companion was younger, a man in his early 20s with a mechanical right hand and eyes that burned with barely contained intensity. "Anakin Skywalker," Luthor observed, recognizing the Jedi from Republic intelligence files. "The Chosen One, according to Jedi prophecy." "I thought you served the Republic." "I served lies," Anakin replied, his voice bitter. "The Jedi Council used me, held me back, refused me the rank I'd earned. And Palpatine, Chancellor Palpatine, promised me power, promised to save my wife, then revealed himself as the Sith Lord orchestrating everything. I won't serve Force users anymore. Not Jedi. Not Sith. I'm done being a piece on someone else's board." Dooku placed a hand on Anakin's shoulder. "Sidious ordered me to kill him. Ordered him to kill me. We both refused. We've come to offer our services, 2 of the most powerful Force users in the galaxy, willing to work for baseline human leadership. If you're serious about ending Force user dominance, you'll need allies who understand how Force users think." Luthor studied them both, the fallen Jedi Master and the disillusioned Chosen One. Both were dangerous. Both were unpredictable. Both represented exactly the kind of risk Luthor normally avoided. But they also represented validation. Force users so disgusted with their own kind that they'd ally with a baseline human who'd spent years building technology to suppress their powers. "Welcome to LexCorp Galactic," Luthor said, extending his hand. "Though understand, you work for me. Not with me. I'm not interested in partnership with Force users. You'll provide intelligence, training, and strategic insight. In return, I'll ensure you survive what's coming." "Acceptable," Dooku agreed, shaking Luthor's hand with aristocratic precision. "Agreed," Anakin added, though his grip was tighter, more desperate. "Just, tell me we're doing something meaningful. That we're not just trading one master for another. We're proving," Luthor said quietly, "that the galaxy doesn't need Force users to function. That baseline humanity can lead through intelligence and merit rather than genetic lottery. That's meaningful enough for me. Is it meaningful enough for you?" Anakin hesitated, then nodded. Outside, the galaxy burned as Order 66 unfolded, clone troopers turning on Jedi generals, the greatest purge in galactic history playing out across thousands of worlds. Palpatine was consolidating his empire while the Jedi Order collapsed. But in every system where nullifier fields were active, Force users found their powers failing at critical moments. Precognition that should have saved them flickered and died. Telekinesis that should have deflected blaster bolts weakened to uselessness. And across the galaxy, baseline humans began to understand that gods could be reduced to mortality through technology. Lex Luthor watched the chaos unfold with cold satisfaction. The war was ending. The Empire was rising. Force users were dying or hiding. And LexCorp Galactic, baseline human achievement without a single midi-chlorian, stood ready to inherit the ashes. 2 years after Order 66, the galaxy had transformed into something neither Republic nor Separatist had envisioned. Emperor Palpatine ruled from Coruscant with an iron fist, his empire consolidating control through fear and military might. The Jedi were extinct, or so the official propaganda claimed. The Senate had become a ceremonial body, stripped of real authority. But Palpatine's empire faced an obstacle no amount of force power could overcome: Lex Luthor. LexCorp Galactic had evolved from industrial corporation into something unprecedented, a third power bloc neither imperial nor rebel, controlling manufacturing capacity that exceeded both sides combined. Over 200 facilities across the galaxy, employing millions, producing everything from medical equipment to starship components. And every facility was a nullifier zone where force abilities simply ceased to function. Luthor stood in his flagship command center, not a planet-side facility, but a massive station in deep space, positioned at the intersection of major hyperspace routes. The station was self-sufficient, heavily armed, and completely independent of any government's jurisdiction. A monument to what baseline human ingenuity could achieve without force user oversight. Imperial Star Destroyer approaching, Commander Tal reported. Flagship configuration. Emperor Palpatine is aboard. Luthor had been expecting this confrontation for months. Palpatine had consolidated his empire, eliminated the Jedi, and now turned his attention to the one power structure he couldn't simply dominate through force manipulation or military intimidation. Allow him to dock, Luthor instructed. But activate all nullifier fields at maximum capacity. I want His Majesty to feel exactly what it's like to be ordinary. The Emperor's shuttle docked in the station's main hangar, flanked by red-robed Imperial guards whose force pikes hummed with lethal energy. Palpatine himself emerged, his face weathered and scarred, evidence of his confrontation with Mace Windu that had revealed his Sith nature to the galaxy. The frail, elderly appearance was carefully cultivated. Luthor knew the Emperor was far more dangerous than he looked. But in a nullifier field, danger became relative. Emperor Palpatine, Luthor greeted formally, meeting him in a conference chamber designed specifically for this moment. Transparent aluminum windows showed the station's impressive scale, construction yards building new vessels, cargo ships arriving and departing in constant streams, weapons platforms maintaining defensive perimeter. Welcome to LexCorp Prime. I trust the journey wasn't too inconvenient. Palpatine's yellow eyes surveyed the station with barely concealed hatred. You've built quite the empire, Mr. Luthor. Independent of my authority. Operating outside Imperial jurisdiction. Supplying both Imperial forces and rebel insurgents with equipment. Some might call that treason. Some might, Luthor agreed, settling into a chair across from the Emperor. But treason requires citizenship, and LexCorp Galactic claims no planetary allegiance. We're a transnational corporation operating under interstellar commerce laws that predate your empire by millennia. We pay taxes where required, follow local regulations, and maintain strict neutrality in political conflicts. Neutrality, Palpatine spat, the word venomous. You armed the rebellion. Your technology powers their ships, shields their bases, and worst of all, your nullifier systems protect their leadership from Imperial force users. You've made it impossible for my Inquisitors to hunt Jedi survivors effectively. I've made it possible for baseline humans to defend themselves against force user aggression, Luthor corrected. Whether those humans are Imperial citizens, rebel insurgents, or independent colonists is irrelevant. Everyone deserves the right to exist without fearing that someone with genetic advantages will invade their minds or crush their throats with mystical powers. Palpatine leaned forward, his presence radiating dark side energy, or trying to. The nullifier field suppressed it, reduced it to barely perceptible malevolence instead of overwhelming intimidation. You hate us. All force users. Because you're jealous of power you can never possess. I don't hate you, Luthor replied calmly. I pity you. You're addicted to an energy field that makes you feel superior, that justifies every atrocity as necessary for order. The Jedi did the same thing, claimed their force sensitivity gave them moral authority. You're not different from them, Emperor. You're just honest about wanting to rule through fear. And you want to rule through what? Technology? Corporate power? Palpatine's scarred face twisted into a cruel smile. You're no better than any tyrant, Luthor. You've simply traded one form of dominance for another. No, Luthor said quietly. I've proven an alternative exists. For thousands of years, this galaxy assumed Force users had to lead because their powers made them inherently superior. I've demonstrated that baseline humans can achieve everything Force users can through intelligence, discipline, and technology. LexCorp stations like this one are testaments to what ordinary beings accomplish when they're not suppressed by mystical oligarchies. Ordinary beings require guidance, Palpatine insisted. Left to themselves, they devolve into chaos and anarchy. The Empire provides structure, order, stability. My rule is harsh because the galaxy needs harshness to function. Your rule is harsh because you're a Sith Lord who believes suffering produces strength, Luthor countered. But I've studied your Empire's economics. Your military expenditures are bankrupting productive systems to build weapons platforms and star destroyers. You're squeezing planets dry to fund a military machine designed primarily to intimidate rather than defend. That's not stability. That's exploitation. Palpatine's expression hardened. I didn't come here to debate philosophy. I came to make an offer. Join the Empire formally. Become Imperial Minister of Technology. Direct authority over all manufacturing, unlimited resources, guaranteed protection. In return, you'll end your support for rebel forces and place your nullifier technology under exclusive Imperial control. So I can help you exterminate the remaining Jedi and crush any resistance to Sith rule? Luthor asked dryly. Tempting, but no. Then you're declaring yourself an enemy of the Empire, Palpatine said, his voice dropping to dangerous levels. I'm declaring myself independent of the Empire, Luthor corrected. There's a difference. LexCorp Galactic doesn't oppose your government. We simply don't acknowledge your authority over our operations. We're too decentralized to conquer militarily, too economically integrated to embargo effectively, and too technologically advanced to intimidate. You can't afford to destroy us because half the Imperial fleet runs on equipment we manufactured. I can afford anything I choose to afford, Palpatine replied coldly. Including your death. Not in a nullifier field, Luthor observed. Right now, Emperor, you're just an old man with political power. You can't crush me with the Force. You can't dominate my mind. You can't even sense my intentions. For the first time in decades, you're facing someone without the crutch of supernatural abilities. How does it feel? Palpatine stood abruptly, his scarred face contorted with rage. You think your technology protects you? I will bring the full might of the Imperial Starfleet down on every LexCorp facility. I will blockade every system you operate in. I will make dealing with you a capital crime. And when your precious stations burn, when your employees beg for mercy, when your empire collapses, I will laugh. You'll try, Luthor agreed, standing to meet the Emperor's glare. You'll expend enormous resources attacking LexCorp installations. You'll drive neutral systems toward the rebellion when they see you're willing to destroy critical infrastructure for personal vendetta. You'll weaken your empire fighting an enemy who doesn't threaten your throne, only your ego. And when you finally realize the cost exceeds any possible benefit, we'll still be here. Building. Manufacturing. Proving that Force users are obsolete. The Emperor's hands clenched, and for a moment Luthor saw him reach for the Force, for the lightning that had killed countless Jedi, for the power that had made him the galaxy's most feared being. But in the nullifier field, nothing happened. No electricity arced between his fingers. No dark side energy manifested. He was ordinary. Human. Mortal. This isn't over, Palpatine hissed, turning toward the exit. You've made an enemy you cannot possibly comprehend. I will end you, Luthor. Not today, perhaps. But eventually. Inevitably. I've heard that before, Luthor replied. Superman said something similar. So did Batman. Darkseid. Brainiac. Every godlike being who assumed their power made them invincible. They all learned the same lesson eventually, intelligence defeats power when intelligence refuses to accept defeat. Come for me if you must, Emperor. But understand that every resource you waste on revenge is a resource the rebellion uses to survive. You're playing my game now. After Palpatine left, Commander Tal approached cautiously. Sir, we're detecting increased Imperial fleet movements. He's mobilizing attack forces. Expected, Luthor said, watching the Emperor's shuttle depart through viewport. Redirect 20% of manufacturing capacity to rebel supply chains. If Palpatine wants war, he'll get one, but not the war he expects. We won't fight him directly. We'll simply ensure his enemies never run out of equipment. That's effectively choosing the rebellion, Tal observed. That's ensuring balance, Luthor corrected. An empire unopposed becomes tyranny. A rebellion unopposed becomes chaos. But both sides constantly fighting, constantly struggling, constantly dependent on LexCorp technology. That's sustainability. That's a galaxy where Force users tear themselves apart while baseline humanity prospers in the spaces between. Over the following months, the pattern established itself. Imperial forces would attack a LexCorp facility. Luthor's security forces, backed by nullifier technology that made Imperial Force users ineffective, would defend long enough to evacuate critical personnel and data. The Empire would claim victory, destroying empty infrastructure. Then LexCorp would rebuild in a different system, employing refugees from the destroyed facility and converting Imperial aggression into recruitment propaganda. Meanwhile, Rebel Alliance forces received a steady supply of equipment, weapons, and most crucially, nullifier technology that protected their leadership from Imperial Inquisitors and Darth Vader's force-based tracking. The rebellion didn't win battles decisively, but they survived. Endured. Grew stronger while the Empire hemorrhaged resources fighting an enemy who refused to die. And in the shadows, Dooku and Anakin Skywalker worked for Luthor, two of the most powerful Force users alive, now serving a baseline human who'd proven that power came in forms beyond midi-chlorians. They trained LexCorp security forces in lightsaber combat. They provided intelligence on Imperial Force user tactics. And they lived proof that even Jedi and Sith could recognize when their philosophy had failed. Sir, Anakin reported during one of their regular briefings, Rebel intelligence confirms that Vader is hunting for you personally. Palpatine's obsessed. He's diverted 3 Inquisitors and an entire Star Destroyer battle group exclusively to tracking LexCorp operations. Good, Luthor replied, reviewing galactic economic projections. Every resource he wastes on me is a resource unavailable for crushing rebellion. How's our nullifier deployment progressing? 63% of major population centers now have installations, Dooku reported. Force user effectiveness is down 42% galaxy-wide. Both Jedi survivors and Imperial Inquisitors are struggling to operate effectively. Your vision of a Force-neutralized galaxy is approaching reality. Luthor allowed himself a rare smile. Not Force-neutralized. Force-equalized. The ability will still exist, but it won't grant automatic supremacy. Force users will become specialists, not rulers. Advisors, not masters. The galaxy is finally learning what Earth knew all along, that gods are optional. Years passed. The Galactic Civil War ground on, Empire versus Rebellion, Sith versus scattered Jedi, tyranny versus freedom. But beneath that surface conflict, a deeper transformation occurred. LexCorp Galactic grew until it represented a third power block that neither side could destroy or ignore. Nullifier technology became ubiquitous enough that Force users adapted, learned to fight without relying exclusively on their powers, or retreated into irrelevance. And Lex Luthor, baseline human from a distant planet called Earth, stood at the center of it all, not ruling, not dominating, but proving through existence alone that intelligence mattered more than mysticism. Palpatine would eventually fall. Luthor had reviewed the patterns, understood the Emperor's vulnerabilities, and quietly ensured the rebellion received every advantage needed to survive long enough to exploit them. Vader would turn against his master, redemption through his son, exactly the kind of sentimental weakness Force users always displayed. But when the Empire collapsed and the New Republic rose, they would find LexCorp Galactic still standing. Still manufacturing. Still employing millions. Still demonstrating that baseline humanity didn't need Force users to build civilization. The Jedi would try to return. They always did. But they'd find a galaxy that no longer automatically deferred to them. A galaxy with nullifier fields in every major city. A galaxy where Force sensitivity was viewed as interesting talent rather than divine mandate. And if they objected, if they tried to reclaim their lost authority through tradition and mysticism, they'd learn what Superman had learned on Earth. That Lex Luthor didn't lose. He simply played longer games than gods expected. The galaxy would remember Lex Luthor not as a hero or villain, but as the man who changed everything. The human from beyond the stars who arrived with nothing and built an empire that neither Jedi nor Sith could destroy. Who proved that midi-chlorians didn't grant the right to rule, only a different set of tools that technology could match, and ultimately neutralize. Decades after his arrival, LexCorp Galactic installations dotted the galaxy like neural synapses, creating a network of Force-suppressed zones where baseline beings could live without fearing mystical manipulation. The nullifier technology became as commonplace as hyperdrives, integrated into planetary defense systems, medical facilities, and government buildings. Force users still existed, the ability couldn't be eliminated entirely, but they no longer dominated. They served, advised, specialized. They were extraordinary, yes. But no longer supreme. The New Republic that rose from the Empire's ashes found itself negotiating with LexCorp as an equal power, not a subordinate corporation. The Jedi Order that Luke Skywalker attempted to rebuild discovered that the galaxy's population centers had developed immunity to Force-based influence. And the Sith, when they inevitably returned from whatever shadows they hid in, would find a galaxy fundamentally resistant to their domination. Some called Luthor a visionary. Others called him a monster who'd crippled the galaxy's mystical heritage. But both assessments missed the essential truth. Lex Luthor had simply refused to accept that genetic accidents should determine civilization's power structures. He'd fought Superman on Earth. He'd fought Force users across an entire galaxy. The battlefield changed, but the principle remained constant. Intelligence defeats power. Planning defeats strength. And baseline humanity, brilliant, determined, ordinary humanity, doesn't need gods. In his private moments, reviewing star charts and economic projections, Luthor sometimes wondered if the Force itself had brought him to this galaxy. If some cosmic design had determined that Force user supremacy needed opposition, and only someone from beyond their reality could provide it. The Jedi would call it destiny. The Sith would call it fate. Luthor called it irrelevant. He hadn't survived through mystical intervention. He'd survived through being Lex Luthor, the smartest human in any room, any system, any galaxy. And whether the Force approved or not, the fundamental nature of power in this distant realm had changed forever. The war between light and dark would continue. Force users would clash across the stars for millennia to come. But they'd do it in a galaxy where their powers were no longer absolute, where ordinary beings had tools to resist them, where intelligence and merit mattered as much as midi-chlorian counts. And somewhere in the spaces between conflicts, LexCorp Galactic would continue building, manufacturing, employing, and proving that the greatest force in any universe isn't mystical energy or genetic superiority. It's a brilliant mind that refuses to accept limitations. Lex Luthor had entered the Star Wars galaxy as a castaway from a distant world. He left it forever changed, a monument to what baseline humanity could achieve when God stopped writing the rules. The Force would remember. The galaxy would remember. And Force users, Jedi and Sith alike, would spend generations trying to undo what one human with vision and determination had wrought. They would fail. Because in the end, Lex Luthor had proven the ultimate truth that neither mysticism nor tradition could deny, that ordinary can defeat extraordinary when ordinary refuses to accept defeat.